This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Manny. And as Manny just said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us here again this week. Man, we got an interesting one for you. But before we get into that, I just want to give a shout out to all of our active military out there that are listening all around the world. We are just honored to have you listen to us when you get a break out there protecting us and, well, the rest of the world. Also, let me know if you need me to give a little shout out to anybody, want to make a little surprise to someone that you know listens out here stateside. I'm more than happy to give them a shout out for you. You can just get a hold of me at Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. Also, if you like this podcast, we would love it if you would share it with your friends, family, and everybody else you know on social media and everything. So be sure and do that if you can. And don't forget the podcast description. There is a link down below there that gives you information about the things that my guest Brian Olson and I are going to be talking about here real soon. Yeah, we have some, isn't really a secret, but not many people know about this. There's some hot spots out there for fishing that just don't get fished. We're going to be talking about the Region 6 Pond Guide. Do you know about this? I didn't, but man, Brian has found some interesting stuff here. You know, it's going to come in handy for you because, you know, depending on the time of year and that, some of the tried and true areas that most people know about, you can have a lot of company out there. Not that that's bad, but sometimes it's nice to go to these areas that don't have a lot of pressure. And this Region 6 Pond Guide, I think, is going to give you some endless opportunities of just different places you can go. My guest is Brian Olson. As you know, you listen to him on Saturdays. He gives the Brian Olson Outdoor Report. That's on our Montana Outdoor Radio show. Do you know how long the FWP has been putting this information out?
You know, I've been looking at it for 10 or 12 years, and It was out then. Oh, yeah. No, it's nothing new. So, so I can't tell you when they originally put the thing out, but it's been super information for me because, okay, like at Fresno, we had a catastrophe onto the west, which really made it tough. Well, there are times in the fall of the year when water's been very low. I quit fishing it.
Right.
But there is so much opportunity close that it's not funny. So I have never hurt myself at all for any variety, any species I want to go after. I mean, it's just been, and this book has been very valuable to me because when I hear the bite of a particular species I'm after, even if I don't hear of a bite, I get after it and go try it and say, hey, this is one. And more than not, when I get on these things and get onto them, it's not the only time I fish it. And I don't think I do any harm to it. I mean, I've always been a guy, I'm not one to fill my freezer, that I keep whatever fish I want to eat pretty much. You know, if I can I only keep 5 or 6 even when I can, because that's a canner load for me. So that's all.
Yeah, and, you know, you are dealing with the smaller bodies of water, so, you know, leave plenty for the next guy. Now, does this talk about, are there any specific differences in regulations that you've noticed, or is it pretty much the same regs as you would find on Nelson or someplace like that?
Well, if there's any special regs, I'm guilty because I've never seen any. And,
Yeah, I
anywhere
couldn't
from,
really find any in there.
yeah, no, I've been up on Dry Fork, there, which is a little bit north of Chinook, and they do have a contest, and it's probably going to be this weekend that they put on there. If the irrigators don't drain it down so bad, the fishing on it has really been very good. And I will say that's the only place that I've ever seen anybody, because it is a little bit larger in pond, but nevertheless, between perch, big rainbows they put in there. It's nothing to get a 10-pounder out of there, really. And I don't know whether they're still doing that, but, walleyes, northerns, you name it. It's and if you're fishing perch and you all of a sudden your rod is doubled over, well, okay, what species I got? A lot of times it is one of those big rainbows. And yeah, no, it's just a ton of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And I noticed that the way that they've got it listed, they show you some of these ponds are private ponds, but they're still managed by the FWP, as I understand it. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few where you have to gain permission, I think. And I've never gone to one that I've gone to the stuff where you or anybody can drive into and fish.
Yeah.
And they are, like I said, they are very abundant. And that's all I can say is that go fish them. And okay, maybe your first time out there, it takes you a while to figure it out. But let me tell you, once you got it figured, they are so super. It's not funny.
Now, are these fish, what are they typically eating? Is food being stocked into these, or is it just natural food that occurs in those ponds?
I believe it's natural. Now, FWP biologists could tell you better, but between the freshwater shrimp, stuff like fathead minnows, you name it, that's what these things are eating. And a lot of these ponds, I mean, in the summertime, there's three different reasons really why you don't fish them. Number one, weather. If Mother Nature hits a storm where it rains, you probably don't want to go in there because you probably can't get in there anyway.
Right.
Number two is bugs. I mean, if you go in there in the summertime, if the gnats and mosquitoes are out, bring protection because they will drive you off the water. And then number three, you get some pretty healthy weed lines and what have you that makes it very, very tough to fish. Sometimes from shore, yeah, you can wade out and fish the edges. And I've always taught, I don't care what species it is, I've always said edge fishing is where I go. I mean, period. If it's the edge of a drop-off, it's the edge of a weed line, that's where I find my fish. And maybe they're elsewhere, but hey, I think I go to my higher percentage places like that, the edges.
Yeah. Well, and to just give you folks a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about here as far as numbers, I was looking just at Phillips County ponds. There's, 37 of those. So it's not like it's just a few ponds we're talking about. A guy could probably go a good portion of his life and not fish in the same one.
Absolutely. Now, when I was in the CAC, I had kind of a hard on, and I believe it's probably in Blaine County. And the head of the Game and Fish said, well, we do it for locals. I said, what locals? We were the locals. We were 65 miles of dirt travel to get to this thing. Yeah. I said, there is nobody up there, but that's kind of what makes them good also, is that they have no pressure. And you can tell by that pond guide that they stock a lot of fish, and they've been doing it for years. It's not a new thing. I mean,
right.
If you're after walleyes, especially, you kind of like them to be in there for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, because that's when you get the big fish.
Sure.
Now, a lot of people kill them. I'm not a big fish killer, period. No. I mean, if I do it, they're hooked so bad that they're dead. I mean, because, hey, I'm not like the normal Joe, especially now. I don't like to fish weekends because I am retired. But nevertheless, I'm a subsistence guy. I like my fish fresh. I don't try to supply the neighborhood. I mean, there's plenty of people, they'll take your fish if you don't want them, but I don't do that. I don't
Right.
try to do that. So that's all. But
Yeah.
fishing is great.
Yeah, that to me just for it's a perfect thing for a retired guy to just say, you know, I'm just going to get out and discover here a little bit. So I assume there's probably a few things that a guy needs to take with him because, as you said, when you get back in some of these areas, you're talking about some roads that are calling them a road would probably be a loose definition. So you're going to want to make sure that you've got the ability to get yourself out if you get stuck, things like that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, maybe you can talk a bit about what you would recommend the person, you know, take with them. And then let's talk a bit about, you know, what you're using and if it varies a lot from pond to pond. So we'll do that. Yeah, my friends at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer are proud to be the authorized dealers for the top truck, trailer, and snowplow brands in the world, like CM Truck Beds, Diamond C Trailers, and of course, like I said, Boss Snowplows. As I've been saying, last winter we got off a little easier, but this year it's going to be a lot different. Now, why am I saying that? Well, did you hear the podcast I did with Matt Rosencrans from the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center? He said Montana and other areas in the Northwest are in for a lot more snow. Of course, that means driveways, parking lots, roads, and all that are going to need to be plowed and plowed a whole lot more for the rest of this winter. And of course, that means you'll want a Boss snowplow to get the job done quickly and perfectly every time it snows. And that, my friends, can only mean one other thing. You need to talk to Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer right now about a Boss snowplow for your truck, tractor, ATV, UTV, while they can still get the one you need. Then you'll be prepared for what's coming. Because not only will you have the best snowplow that is perfectly designed for what you want to put it on, but the folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer will install it for you so it works the first time and every time. Now is the time, my friends, to be ready for what is going to be coming our way a lot with the best. A Boss snowplow from Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. If you're in the area, you can stop by at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, Montana, or you can go see them at rmtte.com. Take a look at all the Boss snowplows they have right now, as well as other equipment like CM Truck Beds and Diamond C Trailers that will also make your life so much easier this winter. Yeah, there is no better place to get you through this winter than Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Again, website rmtte.com. Easy to remember and a great way to take a look at what they have. That's rmtte.com. I'm telling you, folks, they know what they're doing, and they're going to be your best friend this winter. Go see them. Back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, I'm with Brian Olson, and Brian has been talking about this Region 6 pond guide that's, well, it's been out for a long time. They update it from time to time. The most current one, and when you download it, when you click on it in the podcast description, it's going to come up and it's going to say revised June 2022. That is the most current one that they have available right now. So don't think what the heck he's sent me off on a goose chase here, but no, that's the most current one. So Brian, when you head out to a place like this where, you know, yeah, they give you some pretty good directions on how to find these ponds and that, but if you're going by yourself, you are going to get into some tough roads and that. Is there anything that you recommend folks take with you? Because I imagine phone service isn't so great there either.
Well, I maybe it is, maybe it isn't the phone service. I don't know. I do nothing special. Do I pay attention to Mother Nature? You better believe it. I don't need to get up there at like I told you, like Anita up there is like 60, 65 miles. You may never see anybody up there.
Wow.
So don't get up there and get stuck. Don't do foolish things. And mind you, our rancher buddies that allow us to get on this stuff use these roads to feed on. So you don't need to tear stuff up. I mean, and I know that if you're in Helena or Great Falls or somewhere like that, want to come up, if they're calling for bad weather on the weekend, stay on the all weather stuff, because it's not worth you getting up there and getting stuck. Yeah, you can get out, you can chain up, you can have multiple vehicles, you can winch yourself, but remember, nobody fixes this stuff after it's tore up. And it really, it can really make bad relations between you and I, the sportsman, and the ranchers. So be very cognizant of those people that they use the roads a lot more than we do, and they don't care for rutted up stuff any more than you or I do. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So be really safe out there. And like I said, if it's poor conditions, don't try to force it and get your car in there. That's when you just got to get out and hoof it and walk on into it. Would you say there's an average size of these ponds? About how big are they?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I mean, you've got, in this pond guide, it actually talks about Fresno and Nelson and Fort Peck, etc. So you've got very big down to just an acre, a half acre or so. And there again, depending upon who you bring with you, a lot of times I like to have bobbers and stuff for my grandkids.
Sure. Yeah.
Throw some bait out there, but then you find in a hurry that most kids like to cast and reel. So you're better off to put some kind of spinner on it, or what I call a super duper, or hellbenders, or they're kind of a curved spoon, I guess. There's another name for them nowadays. I mean, when I went in and asked for a super duper, well, the guy looked at me funny, so I guess I'm dating myself. But they've got them, and whatever you use for trout anywhere, use there. Whatever you use for perch anywhere, use it. Okay. I mean, I just wouldn't get too involved with changing stuff up, because now here's a secret that I don't tell many people, but I'll let it go now. So a black Mr. Twister, like that 1.5-inch black Mr. Twister, is probably, I kind of came across it accidentally because I saw some, leeches swimming by. And there again, you ask what they eat. Well, they eat a lot of leeches too. And trout love leeches, perch love leeches, walleye, everything eats a frickin' leech. But I throw like an 1/8 or smaller jig head, like with an 1.5-inch black Mr. Twister. Oh, it's tough to beat. I mean, on days when you think they're not biting, put that black Mr. Twister on, they bite.
Yeah. Yeah. So you kind of get them figured out as you go along throughout these different ponds and that, and, find out what works best. Maybe take a note or two. You carry this thing with you. You can always jot a few notes in here and there, but it's fishing, and most of us have a pretty good idea of what a walleye wants. What's a northern wants, or whatever. What would you say is the most prevalent of the fish in these ponds? Is it more of the kind of what am I thinking here? The more of the sunfish type family, or is it just pretty much everything you'd find in any of the big lakes?
Hands down, trout.
Trout.
I mean, rainbows. They put some browns, not many, but mainly rainbows. Perch fishing, I think that most of the perch that they get, they used to have some ponds that they no longer can put water in around Kremlin, but I think the last perch plants probably came from, north of Missoula and some of your perch waters and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll bring them across in stock, but they don't. Perch are very prolific, like our panfish. I mean, sunfish, crappies.
Mm-hmm.
But you can look on these things, and it tells you what the Game and Fish has put in them in the past. I mean, if you want to, if you want to just take the booklet, that's fine. But you can look online. You can research this,
Mm-hmm.
see basically how many years they've been stocking different stuff, and go from there. Now, I don't know how good the records are. That I can tell you that I fished a few places south of Malta that actually the biologist, FWP biologist, and it's not the current one, it's the one before him, because as these irrigation ditches would dry up, they'd leave puddles. Well, he'd go and I guess just being the kind of guy he was, he found out that these things were holding a lot of young a year, whatever. And he caught a lot of walleyes. He stocked a lot of walleye lakes, got in trouble for it, but
Yeah.
But I mean that's neither here nor there. But he created some fishing opportunity that most people, I mean, you just don't know about it. I mean, like I said, I've always been the kind of guy that if I had the time and if I heard a rumor, I went after it.
Sure.
And yeah, sometimes it didn't pan out, but a lot of times it did pan out.
Yeah.
And this pond guide really helps the situation. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because now you really got all the information you need right there at your fingertips. So it's I mean, it's pretty well, not pretty well. I mean, it is very detailed. So, I mean, you've got everything that you really need to do your homework. The rest of us just, get out and have fun. Are most of these ponds pretty shallow ponds, or do they vary all different kinds?
They vary. I mean, it depends on how much silt. When you take a look at some of these ravines that these things are set on, you'll see a 20 or 30 foot drop to the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Now, are they that deep? Some are. But some of them, if they got a lot of silt, well, they fill in.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is the one thing that I will say, that you can go and decide that you want to fish 2 or 3. Rarely did I ever have to do that. Typically, I would go to a body of water, fish that species, and the fishing was great for me. And I mean, that's all I can say about it, that, if you want to come from away, there is no lodging other than hey, I would recommend that you choose one of the lodging places in Chinook and go south of Chinook to begin with, or north of Chinook. It doesn't make any difference.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to Havre and you can go to these places. Just keep in mind, like you and I were talking about, if you fish the reservation at Rocky Boy, those impoundments, I don't know if there's a booklet or anything on them. They are great for multiple species. Mm-hmm. And you can be fishing walleye if you want, catch all the trout that you want, but it does require a different license.
Right. You have to be licensed to be fishing on reservation land.
And down there at south of Havre, you've got the Hill County Park. That requires a special license.
Oh, okay.
So that's why, I mean, yeah, I bought one. I haven't got a current one now. If you're an older guy, you do get a break on a senior.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, the last time I bought, I could buy the senior stuff, but they run about $50, which is, the price of gasoline anymore is pretty cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went south of Chinook or north of Chinook, etc., you don't need any special licenses, and you will get there again all the fish. Anybody that complains to me that they don't have good fishing, and they, like in the area that I lived in, okay, well, they're not fishing. They're not fishing, period. So that's all I can tell you. If you believe that the Milk River, and the Milk River itself is phenomenal for walleyes and catfish and you name it. I mean, any hole there.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, and they, as part of this pond guide, it goes over the Milk River access sites and gives you, again, a lot of detail for where these sites are at and how to get them. So you're gonna what a guy could do, and this is what kind of intrigued me is, let's face it, there are times when we're fishing Fort Peck or any of the other traditional, what we think of as fishing over in Northeast Montana, and we'll hit these dry spells where just you can't get anything to bite. It's just been slow fishing. That's where this whole thing comes into play, because you're going to find one of these ponds that will be producing fantastic, just surely because they don't ever get fished.
Yeah, and it's not hit and miss. That when you go to a pond, if you know what you're doing at all, there's no slack time. I mean, maybe when Mother Nature hits you, then you get a storm. But overall, those fish are going to bite. They're going to give you the opportunity. And, you think these small ponds don't have nice fish in them? You are mistaken, because, hey, I would go and kind of set especially with trout, okay? The trout they stock in there, for the most part, I believe, are non-spawners.
Oh, okay.
But I would put a size limit, because I knew how many filled my canner. And you'd be surprised. You're looking at this thing that you can almost cast across, and the size of some of these fish that you get out of there they're scary.
Yeah.
And that's what I'll tell you. Mm-hmm. And is it today or tomorrow? It's every day. It's basically 365 days a year. They're that good.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like you were saying, you could pick a point to base out of, whether you're talking Chinook or whatever, and say, okay, I'm going to take a week and just start, traveling to these different ponds. And you've got just a pretty amazing fishing trip right at your fingertips there, and could have a hell of a time. So if you're somebody that needs to travel a ways to get over to Northeast Montana in Region 6 there, you can make this well worth your while. And like I say, what's great is if you say, well, I came over to hit the big water on Peck, and the fishing was just terrible, and I drove all that way. Well, you always have this alternative in your back pocket here of just amazing fish, and you may end up saying, this is where I fish now, Well,
that's a real possibility. Typically, though, when we go to Peck, we got a big boat behind us. We got a big camping rig.
Yeah.
You really, a lot of the stuff you don't want to take. Now, some of it you can. I mean, some of it is wide open. I don't know about camping. That you have to check on.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a week. You can be a weekender.
Yeah.
And if you got a family, I don't care if you come out of Missoula or Great Falls or, typically up at Region 6, we got people out of Kalispell, you name it. They come over there hunting. But if you want to just be a weekender, you can probably get your limits fairly easy on these ponds. And as you get to playing around and finding these different ponds you're talking about, you'll see how great the fishing is, period.
Right. And being able to catch some things that you for sure probably don't normally catch. And so that creates a heck of a lot of fun right there, too, for people.
Well, it is. And here's a species that we don't talk about much, but Tiger Muskies, okay? They are a mule. In other words, they don't spawn.
Right.
If you get a body of water like that maybe you've got too many suckers in, what the Game and Fish do to control it, they put tigers in there.
Mm-hmm.
Let me tell you what, you hook onto a 20-pound Tiger Muskie and you've got all that you want to handle. And of the few, and I'm going to say few I've caught, I've had several hooked up, but they are tough to land, but they're a lot of fun. And you have a lot of opportunity in the Haver, Chinook, Harlem. I mean, everywhere. I mean,
I didn't
'em.
even notice that when I was looking through this information. So there are several of these ponds that have tiger muskies in them, huh?
Oh yes, yeah, and then they just grow old and die. They get
Right.
big, and I mean to tell you that, yeah, the scary thing is to have one of these 20, 30-pound fish following you right to shore. Whoa, I mean, it's typically even a guy like me that likes to fish a lot. More than once, I've jerked my lure out of the water because this monster fish is, thinking maybe I don't want to swim in it, but they don't attack people. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, they are there.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, the one thing about tiger muskies, they are tough to catch. I've heard people nickname them as the fish of 1,000 casts. So I'll see if I can pick your brain a little on how you get some of those guys to bite, and then we'll wrap it up with any of your last minute recommendations for discovering all the ponds of Region 6. Even though they may look like one of those, by appointment only places or just for contractors, no, Superior Hardwoods of Montana is always open to everybody. So make it your New Year's resolution to visit their showroom in person. You can find them at 5120 Highway 93 South in Missoula, Montana. Or if you can't get to Missoula, you can visit them online at superior-hardwoods.com. So whether in person or online, stop in and find out what makes them the best source for wood products that you'll ever find anywhere. And I mean anywhere. Like custom mantles, reclaimed beams, lumber, and one-of-a-kind paneling products. They have the best selection of domestic and exotic lumber, turning stock, figured craft wood, and natural edge slabs. A selection so vast, it completely blew me away the first time I saw it. I don't know of anywhere where you'll find such a huge selection of an incredibly unique wood. Now, sorry I got off topic there for a minute, but it still amazes me when I think about what they have there. Now, back to remodeling projects I was talking about. They have you covered from beautiful, versatile alder molding, maple countertops, and an impressive selection of hardwood flooring in stock. Now, don't forget about redoing your home office, or how about likely the most used room in the home, the kitchen. You want to make your kitchen be the most unique kitchen in the world? Superior Hardwoods of Montana is the place. Now, for those of you that have already done business with Superior Hardwoods of Montana, thanks for your business, and we hope to see you again here in 2025. Now, if you're still thinking about what you want to do with your house, no worries, take your time. Just remember, John, Corey, and the rest of the crew are here for you if you need some ideas, or if you want them to find you something special, though chances are they already have it in their massive selection of the most unique woods in the world. They really are your best source for anything and everything wood. So, as I said, stop in person at 5120 Highway 93 South in Missoula, or online at superior-hardwoods.com, and let them guide you through the woods. Back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, Brian Olson is my guest. We're talking about this great resource called the Region 6 Pond Guide. You can get it off the FWP website, or just simply go to the podcast description. There was a description that came with this podcast, whether you go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts or, the MontanaOutdoor.com, wherever. When you click on it, you'll see that guide, and you'll see, and I put it in bold there, it says links, and just click on that, and that'll give you the link right to this pond guide. Then you can either download it into your phone as a PDF, that way you don't have to have cell service to look at it, or however you want to do it. but or print it out, go old school on us and print it out and have it with you too. But anyway, gives you a lot of great information. Now you brought up Tiger Muskie, which is something that that fish can be one of the more frustrating fish that you'll ever find. I don't know why they are so picky, or if they're just that smart and they can delineate what is real and what is not. I don't know. What is your theory on why it is so hard to get a tiger muskie to bite?
Well, I can't answer that question. I can tell you that anybody that goes out there, you're going to battle weeds. So, I mean, there's a lot of articles out there about how to fish muskies. Well, that's great if you're in open water. A lot of times in the summer when I fish them, we have a very weedy condition. I use a bass spinnerbait.
Okay.
I like the chartreuse. If I get short hooks, or short, bumps. Sometimes they're caught, sometimes they're not. Mm-hmm. And especially if you get one to follow you from shore. So go, have different blades, anywhere from willow leaves up to Colorados, Indianas, everything that you can imagine. And, don't just cast and retrieve. I mean, I'm one of these guys that I vary my casts and my retrieves and try to pick out where they want, what they want. And that's all I can tell you. I think I said my favorite color is chartreuse.
Yep. Something
about that northern species, they like chartreuse. Mm-hmm. And that's typically, you don't get all weeded up. I don't use super heavy line, but I'll use 10 or 12 or 15 pound, what I call hard line, which is braid. Mm-hmm. You better have your drag set, because if you think they can't pop that stuff, you are mistaken. And you want them to be able to take line, because if you don't, you're either going to pull the hook out of them or they're going to break you off, period.
Yeah, because these are big fish. Now, these can get very good sized.
Yeah, I think to keep them, you got to exceed 30 or 32 inches. I'm not exactly sure because I don't target them that often. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when I go, I'm using, I like 4-pound test,
Sure.
But I use 4-pound braid. I don't know what it actually tests at. I've caught some big fish on 4-pound braid, and I use, some kind of either mono leader or what's a solar, I can't, but anyway, I do put a leader on this stuff. And there again, when I'm catching these big rainbows, especially, you better, there again, you guys that have been out or trout fishing, you just don't reel a big trout in. Mm-mm. When they finally get tired out, and there again, I bring a net with me on these shorelines that you'd think, well, I can just beach them. Oh, good luck.
Yeah, no, Yeah, that you're dealing with an incredibly active fish that knows what the hell they're doing. They are not going to give up the fight easy at all, and so. But that's what makes them so darn fun too.
Yeah, and maybe they were stalked at some point in time, but I imagine like if they stalk me or you out in the wild, how long is it? Either you're going to die or you're going to become wild.
Yeah.
And what you catch mainly become wild. So that's all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And the tiger muskie, that's a cross between the musculunge, or however you say that, and the northern, isn't it? Isn't that the...
I think so. I mean, they don't get as super big as a regular big muskie that you get in the Great Lakes region or,
right.
East of here. But, hey, they get big enough, period.
Sure.
They're going to give you all you want.
And they are just naturally sterile. I know the FWP has used them in certain... which is perfect for ponds and that, where maybe a particular species is just kind of overpopulated, and they will throw those things in there, and they're kind of like, I call them like a biological Roomba. They will just go through and clean an area out. But the beauty of it is they aren't going to breed. So at some point they just die off, and you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. So
just exactly. Yep.
Yeah, they're a pretty neat fish. Of the different fish that are available in these ponds, and I mean the list goes on and on. What would you say is the most unusual fish you've come across in these ponds throughout Region 6?
Oh, I don't know about unusual, but there again, when we touch on the Tiger Muskie, a lot of these things have got a lot of channel cats. You get down there in Cow Creek, and I don't know whether you can camp. Cow Creek is a pretty big impoundment now. That's one that there is no good boat launch. It's kind of like Dry Fork, but you can put a pretty good sized boat on this, catch some real nice channel cats, catch a lot of walleyes, etc. So just use your pond guide. It tells you what's in there. It tells you what they're stocked. And it might take you a time to get down there and say, hey, next time I'm going to bring a bigger boat, or I would suggest to start out with anybody just fish from shore or on the ice.
Yeah.
And then do what you want to do thereafter. If you think you can do it, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep in mind, you are going to travel a little ways, and you may not want to pull a big boat down this stuff, because the bigger is not so much better for a lot of this.
Right.
I had a little 14-foot, I guess you call it John boat, that worked excellent for me because, hey, back in the day, I could drive this thing even a quarter mile over almost anything to get into this. And pay attention, some of this water is, you can't use a gasoline off it. So then you're going to either paddle or you're going to use your electric. So just, pay attention to that as well.
Sure. Yeah. And a John boat, something like that sounds perfect. Or even, I suppose a guy could even use like a drift boat or something like that.
Well, you could, or canoes, or
heavy.
kayaks, you name it. I mean,
Yeah.
they make some fantastic kayaks if you got the money you want to pay for it. But nevertheless, I mean, you don't need very much. Go on out there with your waders and your float tube, and that's actually how I started fishing this stuff was out of float tubes with my waders.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to do that either.
Yeah, float tube would be an excellent way to discover some of these things. Yeah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why I went to boats and what have is because of electronics. And I don't use the new sonars. I'm still a 2D guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I still like my flashers as well. But there again, I can locate my edges and what have you. So that's why I would use some sonar equipment.
Mm-hmm. Is there any particular pond that you can think of that might be a little more accessible and easier to get to for ice fishing?
Well, if you're going to go on down there, like if I were to go back there and fish it today, I would fish like Grasshopper. This is all south of Chinook.
Okay.
Grasshopper, there's Coors Reservoir. I think we can still drive into that. Favors, all super fishing.
Okay.
And I forget what the one is up north of Zurich, right off the main road. I can't think of the name. Big crappies, big rainbows in it. I mean, and it's right on the county road, so you really can't miss it. Further to the north, you can get up to a night and what have you, which is on good times is tough to get into. So that's all I can say. So get up there, do your exploring, and decide this is where I want to go. But I can tell you that it is well worth your time.
For sure. Well, Brian, I want to thank you very much for spending the time with us and teaching us about this opportunity that has been around a long time. It's just, some things just kind of get, what do you call it? People forget about it. And next thing you know, no one's fishing it. And to find out that here's all these ponds, and there's a lot of them, and you may not see another human being all day long. That's that's a lot of fun there. So thank you very much, Brian. If folks have any kind of questions or that, I'll just. Do you mind sharing an email with us, or do you want them just to contact me and then I'll get a hold of you?
I'd prefer if they just go to get a hold of you. I mean,
Sure.
I've got an email. I'm not a big fan of the newer systems, which
Right.
people think,
I
yeah,
got
that's
it.
not new. But
Yeah.
no, just get a hold of you, and I can actually put some X's on the map. If you can fish, you're going to enjoy yourself.
All right. Well, that'll be an easy way for you folks to get in touch with Brian and just shoot me any of the questions for him, and I'll hunt him down and get those questions answered for you and that. And get out there and discover this stuff. This is some fun stuff. All right, Brian. Well, thank you very much for spending the time with us today here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Hey, you betcha. And you have a great weekend and rest of your life, period.
There you have it, folks. There's Brian Olson of the Brian Olson Report. We hear him often on MontanaOutdoor.com. But this is just a great resource. Be sure and click that link and just start discovering. Until we meet again, folks, be safe out there. Be good to each other, and we will see you next time right here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanaoutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.